Begin. Okay. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي كحرت بها كل شيء وخزلها كل شيء وزللها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحت كل إسام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النكام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لكل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خازن متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بكسبك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم أسألك سؤال من ازدادت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وأزم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم أزم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكروك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لكبائه ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي الكبيه بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى كتيم ذكرك لي ومنك علي اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فاضح من البلاء أكلت وكم من إسار وكيت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا أنه نشرتا اللهم أزمى بلائي وأفرت بي سوء حالي وكسرت بي أعماني وكدأت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد أماني وخدتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومثالي يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء أملي وفئالي ولا تفزحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور أتوفا إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف الضر والنظر في أمري إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أحوى وأسأله على ذلك الكذاب فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستكينا مستغفرا منيبا مكرا مذئنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وادخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وساقي يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عزمي، يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي. هبني لابتداء كرمك وصالح برك بي، يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد ما انطوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك، ولهجا به لساني من ذكرك، واعتقده ضميري من حبك. وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك، هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تزيع من ربيت أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسنتك بتوحيدك صادقا، وبشكرك مادها، وعلى قلوب ترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى زمارها حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارها سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعا، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا رب، يا كريم يا رب. وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مقصود، يسير بقاء، كثير مدته. وكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك. وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الهكيل المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما من هازج أبكي. لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما من هازج أبكي. لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته، فلئن سيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فحبني يا إلهي سيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وحبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر أنا النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي أفور؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني نعتكا لزجن إليك بين أهلها زجيجا آمنين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء فاقدين، ولا أنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفتك، وذاك طعم عذابها بمعصيته، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يزج إليك زجيج مؤمل رحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسلوا إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يهلكه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفا؟ أم كيف يتكلكل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا؟ أم كيف تشجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربا؟ أم كيف يرجو فزنك في إتكه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك، فباليقين أقطع لما حكمت به من تعذيب جاهديك وكزيت به من إخلاد معانديك، لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كان لأحد فيها مكرا ولا مقاما، لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها معاندين، وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما. أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالكزية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها، أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل أملته، كتمته أو أعلنته، أخفيته أو أظهرته، وكل سيئة أمرت بإصباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني، وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جواره، وكنت أنت الركيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت، وأن توفر هزي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فزلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا إلهي يا سيدي ومولاي ومالك ركي، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا أليما بزري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك مأمورا، وبخدمتك موصولا، وأعمالي عندك مقبولا، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا، يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، قوي على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانه، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في اتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في البارزين، واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وخافك مخافة الموقنين، واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بالسوء فأرده، ومن كادني فكده، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نسيبا عندك، واقربهم منزلة منك، وخسهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجودي بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك نهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأكلني أسرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك كزيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وزمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا ربي نسبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي ولا تأت من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجنة والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس مالها الرجاء وسلاهه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النكم يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا.
اللهم صل على Muhammad وعلى Muhammad وعجل فرجهم. Jazakallah, Brother Daniel. Now I will request Sheikh Amin to continue with his tafsir in Nahjul Balagha. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you, brother. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. الخطبة 24. ولعمري ما علي من قتال من خالف الحق وخابط الغي من إدهان ولا إيهان فاتقوا الله عباد الله وفروا إلى الله من الله. Khutbah number 24 of Nahjul Balagha. In this khutbah, Imam Ali alayhi salam, what he's doing is he is speaking to a group. It doesn't specify who this group of people is, but it says that he was speaking to a group of people. My guess is that this is probably one of the two of Safin or Jamal. His own people. He's speaking to them and encouraging them, and as a matter of fact, even hyping them up to go to the battlefield against the enemies, whoever they are, either the Ashab of Jamal or the Ashab of Siffin. In this khutbah, it begins like this. It says, the Imam says, Wala Amri. He does a qasam, he swears. Now, Amri doesn't mean swearing by God, it means swearing to yourself. We have this in Farsi as well. You'll say Bejan Khodam. You might have this in Urdu too, I'm not sure. Where when you want to make sure that people believe you in what you're saying, you will not swear by Allah, because as you all know, we do have this ruling in Islamic fiqh that if you're telling the truth even, it's not encouraged and it might even be makruh to swear by Allah's name. Okay, that's if you're telling the truth. If you're not telling the truth, that's a different story. That's it'll be haram. So all in all, you don't find the imams always swearing by Allah unless it's really necessary. In this case here, the imam says wala amri, which, and as I said in Farsi, means bijana khudam. When you swear by your own name, by your own self. In other words, may I die if I'm lying. God forbid, of course. But he wants to make a point here, so he gets the people's attention like this. He says, wala amri ma aliyun min qitali man khalaf al-haq wa khabat al-ghay min idhanin wala ihan. He says, look, when it comes to Ali ibn Abi Talib, now he mentions himself as a third person here. He says, when it comes to Ali and fighting those who are against the haqq and the truth and are walking unstably on the path of misguidance, when it comes to fighting them, Ali ibn Abi Talib is not a person of compromise and he's not a person of weakness, because you see there's one of two reasons why a person won't go against people like that. Number one is because you're compromising. There might be something better in it for you if you don't, etc. Sometimes no, it's just that you have weakness, you're scared or whatever it is. He says, look, there's no reason for me now that the duty and responsibility is to fight the ones who are on the wrong path and are going against haqq. Yeah, once that's the responsibility, I'm not a person to show any weakness or to compromise in what I have to do. Here, the Imam has used two ways to describe people who are not on the true path. He says, "Man khalafa al-haq wa khabat al-ghay." Those who do mukhalafa of the haqq, those who go against God, number one, go against the true path and the path of haqq. He also uses another term here, khabata al-ghay. Those who, now khabata, these books say that it means a person who is walking, but not walking in a stable way. They're walking in an unstable fashion, right? And so it says the ones who are walking unstably on the path of misguidance. Okay, he uses these two terms. Now here, the scholars have pointed a nice point out. That sometimes you know the truth, you go against it. Okay, this is khalaf al-haq. And that's the first term that the Imam has used. He says, I don't have a problem fighting them. Of course he doesn't. But there's also another group of individuals. They're not mukhalif of haqq. They're not against it. It's not like they're on one side and haqq is on the other side. But rather, they might even be trying to be on the side of haqq. But in reality, they are walking on the path of misguidance. Here, the scholars have pointed out, it was pretty nice when I saw this, when I read this, that they say there are some people who it's not their fault that they're on the wrong path. They might have been confused about the right path, the true path, and so on. These people, even Imam Ali doesn't have a problem fighting with them. Now, what's going on here? I thought if it's not your fault that you don't know, that you're off the hook, that God might forgive you on the day of judgment, so on and so forth. So what's going on here? Well, the answer I think is pretty clear, brothers and sisters. What happens in the akhirah, whether or not a person is forgiven or not, is one thing. But it's another thing what the Islamic ruler feels is the duty to carry out regarding a group of people right now that are living under his rule, but might be causing chaos amongst the civilians of the Muslim lands, right? These are two totally different aspects. And this is very important. Why? Because we cannot mix these two aspects up even today. Yeah, today, for example, you'll have people, they will raise the flag of somebody or a group of people or a party or I don't know, whatever you want to call it, a political party even, whatever. And they might have the right intentions, yet they're mistaken. Okay, God will forgive them on the day of judgment or not, that's a different story. That's between them and God, and inshallah Allah will forgive them because they were mistaken. They weren't doing it with ill intentions. But in this life, it's going to have its bad effects, yeah, if they're mistaken. Now, sometimes it gets worse than that. Not only if you're mistaken are you going to be causing problems for yourself and others, you're going to be causing chaos. And this is what happened during the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam. I'm going to give you an example for this. Um, during the time of Imam Ali, especially the Battle of Jamal, especially the Battle of Jamal, I'm going to say, the people, according to historians and others, were confused actually. When the Battle of Jamal took place, brothers and sisters, we have to understand, we are sitting here many years later and we're able to easily tell that the people of Jamal were wrong and the people of Ali ibn Abi Talib were on the right path. Back then, though, they were confused. Why? People were confused because they don't know which side is right or wrong, because on each side you have grand Sahabis. You have the Mu'mineen Aisha, for example. And so they didn't know which side they're supposed to take. They were confused. There were some who joined this army, some who joined that one, some who chose to just stay away from the whole thing, like Sa'ad bin Abi Waqqas or like Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. Although for them, I'm not going to necessarily say that they were trying to stay away from fitna. There might have been other reasons why they did such. But anyway, what I want to say is this: when the battle broke out and many were killed and lost their lives, and eventually Ali ibn Abi Talib's camp was the victor out of this whole battle. What happens is, this is important now, they had taken prisoners from the side of Talha and Zubayr. The Muslim, the Shia of Ali, or let's not even say it like that. Let's say the army of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam had taken prisoners from Talha and Zubayr's side. What happens here, at least in some of the reports, it says that Imam Ali alayhi salam, he freed all of the prisoners of Jamal. And his reason for that was that, yes, the people are confused. They didn't know. And so he let them go. Now, Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he says this, that means in the Battle of Siffin, if he takes prisoners, he doesn't have to necessarily let them go, because that's when you're not supposed to repeat the same mistake twice. Yes? Although even with there, you find reports where Ali still, in the Battle of Siffin even, at least released many, if not all of the prisoners there too. Ali, what can Ali ibn Abi Talib do? Poor thing, he has to keep the unity of the ummah, I guess, and try to decrease as much violence as is possible. I mean, if these people are prisoners, they're the same ones that were in Medina, maybe some of them with Ali, you know? Now they're in Sham and they're coming and fighting in the Battle of Siffin. So anyway, the point being right now, I don't want to talk about Siffin, I want to talk about Jamal. In the Battle of Jamal, these people, Ali alayhi salam, he says that they're confused. There's big Sahaba on this side, big Sahaba on that side. And so we gotta, I'll let them go. And he frees these prisoners. There was confusion. So you see, brothers and sisters, if there's confusion, that means that they didn't want to be on the wrong path necessarily, right? They didn't even necessarily want to be on the wrong path. It just so happened that they were wrong and mistaken in identifying the right path, and they're on the wrong path. So between them and Allah on the Day of Judgment, we don't know how Allah is going to judge. I'm not saying this about all of the Ashab of Jamal. Personally, I think that the majority of them knew what they're doing is wrong. But anyway, it just seems that way. Although my opinion is not very worth anything really. But this is just how it seems. But all in all, whoever, it wasn't their fault and they were not on the right path, but it wasn't on purpose. Whatever however He's gonna deal with them on the Day of Judgment is one thing. I want you to pay attention to this. But how Ali ibn Abi Talib in this life deals with them is another story. This is something very important. We find this in even capital punishment in Islam. Sometimes a person, there might not be bad intentions regarding something. There's going to be a punishment though for what they've done. Okay, it's a long story. I don't want to get into those details. So here, Ali ibn Abi Talib in the Battle of Jamal, if these people are going to be excused on the Day of Judgment, maybe, we don't know. In this life, though, Ali is going to do what he's supposed to do as ruler, which is to fight them and oppose them because they're causing chaos amongst the people. I mean, the best example for that is the Khawarij. In Nahjul Balagha, Imam Ali says about the Khawarij, he says they tried to reach the truth, but they got it wrong. But what happened? In the Battle of Nahrawan, Ali ibn Abi Talib wiped them out completely, except for like a handful maybe, who remained. I don't know the number, but they were very, very few who were left. That's why I'm using the word exterminate. Imam Ali really exterminated the Khawarij in Nahrawan. Why? Were they not trying to find the right path? Well, Ali alayhi salam in Nahjul Balagha, he says they were trying to find the right path. It's crazy. Like but the akhirah aspect is one thing, the dunya aspect is another thing. I, as the ruler of the ummah now, have to make sure that I keep the order and the calm for my civilians. And the Khawarij were doing exactly the opposite. And they were terrorizing the people. And so he got rid of them and exterminated them. Here also he says, Man khabat al-ghay. I don't have a problem fighting those who are against haqq, and I don't have a problem fighting the ones who are on the path of misguidance or on the false path, the path of falsehood, whether even if they don't know it themselves, even if it's not their fault. I have to do what I have to do. Yes. Min idhanin wala ihan. I'm going to do all of this without compromise or any weakness whatsoever. And of course, a person says this who has the strongest knowledge, one, and two, the strongest faith, knows that this is the responsibility, doesn't falter at all, doesn't get scared that, oh, what if I'm wrong? No, he has the knowledge to identify what is to be done and then carries it out, no matter what, whatever happens to him. And that's why somewhere else in Nahjul Balagha, he says, لا يقيم أمر الله سبحانه or أمر الله سبحانه إلا من لا يصانع ولا يضارع ولا يتبع المطامع. This is Ali ibn Abi Talib, brothers and sisters. And this is why we love him so much. And this is why others didn't like him so much, because it was hard. He was no compromise. He was a person that would not compromise at all. He says that the amrullah, the command of Allah, the will of God cannot be taken care of and fulfilled except by who? Except by the one who doesn't compromise. Number one. Number two, doesn't use the methods of those who are of the path of falsehood. Those who are on the path of falsehood, brothers and sisters, for them the ends justify the means. But here Ali alayhi salam, he says the ends don't justify the means for me. I'm not going to use the methods of Ahlul Batil. Number two, and they came to Imam Ali alayhi salam asking him about Muawiyah and how cunning and how smart Muawiyah is, and he said that's not smartness. Do you think I can't be like that? There's a reason why I don't use the methods Muawiyah uses. All right, so number one, a person who compromises cannot fulfill the command of God, the will of God in the lands. Number two, the one who uses the wrong methods. And this comes all the way down to us in our centers, in our communities, in our masjids, back home in the West. Using the wrong methods is just not going to work. Brothers and sisters, it just won't work. We have to make sure that we follow the footsteps of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam in everything, in not compromising, in being truthful, and so on and so forth. This is what the Imam teaches us. He says, look, you want to be a person who is in charge of what God wants to take place here on the earth. You want to work for the cause of God. It doesn't happen for those who compromise. They're not the ones who are going to do it. In other words, God doesn't want them to do it. You're like, no, God, let me do it. He's like, I don't want you to do it. La yuqimu illa. No one is supposed to take care of this business. No one has that responsibility except the ones who don't compromise. Number one. And number two, they don't use the wrong methods. Number three, wala yattabi'ul matami'. They don't follow their desires. If you're going to go for the cause of God, you have to make sacrifices and put aside your desires. Sometimes they will clash, even if they're not haram even. I want you to pay attention to this. If a person is going to take the flag of God's cause in their hand and say, I'm working for God, then here there's no room for, you're going to have to make sacrifices sometimes for halal even pleasures, yeah? Things that the Sharia has allowed even. You're going to have to be careful about those. This is how it is. Either put the flag and banner down, or you're going to have to make these sacrifices. So he says, look, this is how you can carry that flag. You can carry that torch of Allah's will and Allah's cause, inshallah. Okay. Fattaqullah, ibadallah. After he tells them all of this, tells them to do all of that, or excuse me, tells them about himself, like, this is how I am. So you as my soldiers, you as the ones who are under my command, I want you to have taqwa as well. In other words, the same way I don't compromise, I don't weaken, I don't use the wrong means. I just go forward and not worry about the rest. I need you to be the same. But he says all of that in the word of ittaqullah. Fear Allah. Fear Allah, ibadallah, O servants of Allah. In other words, you're the servants of Allah. You have to try to fulfill God's command. And so for you, it's the same thing. He could have said, be like me, and don't compromise, don't get weak, all that kind of stuff. He didn't say that though. He said it in one line. In other words, letting them know this is the duty right now. This is the responsibility. This is your taqwa right now. And here, I like how he says this, because those who think that taqwa means God-wariness, something in your heart, and so on, it's not the case, brothers and sisters. And even if we do translate it as such, it has to translate into action eventually. It's wrong to think that taqwa is something only in the heart. It has to manifest in one's actions. So here, the Imam, he says, have taqwa. Not that, have fear of God in your heart. Have taqwa means, if you fear God, this is what you need to do right now. You have to go ahead and alongside me, fight the enemy, those who are against the haqq, or even those who are on the wrong path, and it's not their fault, because right now they're causing a lot of problems for the Muslim ummah. وَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ مِنَ اللَّهِ. One of my favorite lines, really. One of my favorite lines. I love this line. Why? Because it puts its finger on both aspects of God. The hope that you have to have in God, and also the fear you have to have in God. Firru ilallah, min Allahi ilallah. And flee from God to where? To God. What's going on here? Isn't that paradoxical? Because usually when we flee from somebody, where do we go? We flee to other than that person we're fleeing from. The one we're fleeing from is usually different than the one we're fleeing to, right? But here, the Imam, he says it like that. He says, Firru min Allah, from God, ilallah, to God. What's going on here? Well, if it is the case, the way the philosophers say it, that la mu'athira fil wujud illallah, that there is no one who affects existence except God himself, then if I am fearful of anybody, including God, where do I go to in the end? In the end, I go to Allah. That's just how it is. Because God is so great, because God is so kind. So here it's as if, because of the two aspects of God, it's as if, the Imam is being very eloquent here. And I'll share a couple of verses with you as well to show that we have this also in the Quran as well, traces of this wording. It's as if the Imam is making God into two personalities, right? One is that personality that we're afraid of, that we want to flee from. The other personality is the one that's all kind, all merciful, all forgiving, that we want to flee to. So in our minds, he makes it as if there's two personalities. And so he's saying, flee from that one that you're afraid of to the one that you are not afraid of. What does that mean? That means if you want to be safe from the wrath and punishment of God, then run to God Himself. But how do you run to God? With that taqwa that He told us one line before. You can't just say, "Oh Allah, I fear you, so I'm going to run to you." He's going to say, "Well, listen to me." That's the whole point of all of this, brothers and sisters. That's the whole point of creation, that we run to Him. Running to Him, He's not in some far off land that we actually run to. Yeah, like that guy who kept running and running, and running. Years ago, there was a movie. There was this guy. He just kept running. Yeah, I don't know, and then he just stopped running and he ran back home. That guy, yeah, it's not like he's in some far off land. Allah, we have to run to Him. What does running to Him even mean? It means taking Him as my guardian. Well, how am I going to take Him as my guardian? By practically taking Him as my guardian, by listening to Him. If He's my guardian, right? If you have a guardian, that means that's your caretaker. That means anything they want for you, you listen, right? They want it for us out of their kindness, right? That's why they're our caretaker. That's why they've been designated as our guardian. So fleeing to Him equals taking Him as my wali and my mawla. Allah is all of our mawla. And so if He is, that means we listen to Him. Okay, so this line, what it's actually saying is, when it says flee from Allah to Allah, what does it mean? It means flee from His wrath and punishment by becoming an obedient servant of His. That's what it means. And so, brothers and sisters, this is very important. Those of us who are active in our communities, in our centers, we do all that kind of stuff. First and foremost, what we have to do is, if we want that stuff to help us in the akhirah, which is good, we have to make sure that we have taken care of our wajib and haram with Him. I see sometimes brothers and sisters, sometimes they're even younger, and it's good that they have that love to help and that love to be part of the cause, especially in Muharram Safar, mashallah. Alhamdulillah, may Allah give them extra tawfiqat. We have to make sure that we are abiding by all the laws that the Imams brought for us. Okay? So we can also be an example of this. Firru min Allahi ila Allah. What do we have in the Quran? There's two verses I think that I had that I want to share with you. Yeah. The first one is وَظَنُّوا أَلَّا مَلْجَأَ مِنَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا إِلَيْهِ. It's talking about the people, the wretched people, the evil people on the day of judgment, right? When they see the adab, the punishment, and all of that, it says وَظَنُّوا أَلَّا مَلْجَأَ مِنَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا إِلَيْهِ. That they reach this conclusion that there is no refuge from Allah except through Allah, which is interesting. Am I getting choppy, brothers and sisters? I don't know. I see my video getting a little choppy. I hope my voice is still okay. All right. It looks like it's better now. All right. So, وَظَنُّوا. Here, dhan in Arabic means conjecture. To be not 100% sure, but be pretty sure. But in the akhirah, everything is apparent, everything is manifest. So here, dhannu means they know, alimu. All right, so they know for a fact on the day of judgment, because that is yawm shuhud. Everything is mashhud, everything is apparent then. And there's a lot of tawheed that happens on the day of judgment. The day of judgment is when tawheed manifests. It was always there. It manifests for us. It's beautiful. Even for the sinners. It says they will reach this conclusion that, oh my God, if we were to run away from Allah, the only place we would have as a refuge is with Allah Himself. But it's too late now. They didn't listen to Amirul Mu'mineen in this life where he said, Firru min Allahi in Allah. On the day of judgment, it says, وَظَنُّوا أَن لَا مَلْجَأَ مِنَ اللَّهِ إِلَّا إِلَيْهِ. That there is no refuge except to Him. From Him to Him. Subhanallah. Another verse of the Quran, it says, فَفِرُّوا إِلَى اللَّهِ إِنِّي لَكُمْ مِنْهُ نَذِيرٌ مُبِينٌ. That the Prophet says that, O people, firru, flee to Allah. Flee to Allah because I am here to warn you. Of what? Of God's punishment. So all of these verses, they come together. And so Amir al-Mu'mineen, what he's trying to say becomes very clear. وَامْضُوا فِي الَّذِي نَهَجَهُ لَكُمْ. So you can tell here, from especially in this line, that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam is now really trying to, hype the people up, get them ready, encourage them to fight alongside him. It was not an easy task to mobilize the people of Kufa to go and fight the people of Basra. It took some hard work. People were not mobilizing. If I'm not mistaken, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was still in Medina, and he's trying to mobilize troops in Kufa and join them with an army from Medina, but they're not mobilizing. This is the beautiful part now. He eventually sent a few people, maybe Malik al-Ashtar, maybe Ammar bin Yasir. It didn't work. But then he sent Rayhanatul Rasul, this flower of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. The people of Kufa till then, they had never had such a great figure amongst them of the Ahlul Bayt. Think about it. Before the Battle of Jamal, Kufa really wasn't too big. Yes, the city of Kufa, from what I remember, it was established by the second Khalifa. But you never had Ahlul Bayt going there in the 25 years that Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam was not Khalifa. It's only after he became Khalifa and the Battle of Basra, aka the Battle of Jamal, takes place, that Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam sees the city of Kufa as a very strategic city that's close to Basra that he can use as his base. Anyway, he sends different companions of his to mobilize people there. It's not working. He sends Rayhanatul Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alih there. The people who had never seen Ahlul Bayt before, upon seeing Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, they all mobilize and they volunteer to fight alongside Ali ibn Abi Talib. And really, the Kufans in the Battle of Jamal, they did wonders. And Ali alayhi salam was very happy with them. Yeah, it's only later, a few years later, that all of a sudden things change, which is a wake-up call for all of us, brothers and sisters. For myself, a person like me is always saying, "Oh, Sahib al-Zaman, please return, please return." But the Kufans, they had never seen Ahlul Bayt. They see Ahlul Bayt, they really fall in love. And so they're alongside Amir al-Mu'mineen. But it reaches a point that Amir al-Mu'mineen is scolding them 3, 4, 5 years later. And it's because of that Ali alayhi salam is not able to finish the job of Muawiyah. They started to slack off a little bit. And I mean, we don't need to go further than that. What happened after Amir al-Mu'mineen's Shahada and what happened on Ashura. Yeah, we don't need to go there because it's obvious. So anyway, these Kufans were really awesome in the beginning. The point I want to make is Rayhanatul Rasul had this effect on the people, the flower of Rasulullah amongst these people. Now, he's trying to get them ready, really. He's doing everything he can to get them ready. And as I said in the beginning of our talk, I personally feel like this khutbah was done for the Battle of Jamal. But I don't have very strong proof for it. It's just, I don't know, the language that's used by the Imam, it seems like, it's for the Battle of Jamal. But anyway, that's a different story. وَامْضُوا فِي الَّذِي نَهَجَهُ لَكُمْ. Umdu in Arabic means, to move on with something, to get on with something. And so he's ordering them. Umdu فِي الَّذِي نَهَجَ لَكُمْ. It means, if I'm going to explain what he's saying here, it's like he's saying God has put certain tracks for you. If you're a train, you go by what the track, whichever direction the tracks and the train tracks take you, right? So he says, that which Allah has set as a path for you, take it, pass on it. In other words, right now, what Allah has in mind for you and your taqwa lies in is the path of fighting. It's not easy. It's not easy. You're not going to like it, but that's just how it is. This life is going to be tough. But know that this is something that Allah has put before you. So you have to take it. You have to bite the bullet. It's not going to be easy. And this also applies to all of us today as well. Things happen in our lives. We are left with no choice but to change the direction of our lives, those turning points sometimes. If there is no other way, and we know that God's satisfaction lies in a certain way and path, then we have to take it. We have no choice. Sometimes you just know this is what Allah wants from you. وَقُومُوا بِمَا أَصَبَهُ بِكُمْ. Establish and carry out that which He has, let's say, has connected to you. Asabahu in Arabic, and in Farsi we say asabam khurshud. Asab are those nerves and tendons that you have in your body. These nerves and tendons, they're like a net, right? They keep the body together as well. When you tear a ligament, when you tear a tendon, it's a problem, right? Your leg or arm might be hanging, but you can't control it anymore. And it's probably very painful as well. Here, look at, this is the term that he uses, asabahu. Like a tendon that is keeping everything together, is attached to you, stuck to you. You can't live without it. Here it says, look, you got to fulfill and carry out that which Allah has attached to you of responsibilities. You just can't live in this life, brothers and sisters, and think that you won't carry the burden of God's responsibilities on you. Now, alhamdulillah, 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 the burdens that Allah has put on us, the responsibilities that He's put on us, there are your everyday wajib and haram. And that's why it gets a little sad and worrying if we are going to be struggling with those basic wajib and harams of us every day. Okay? فَعَلِيٌّ, and I love this line. I'm sorry, I know I said there's a few lines in here I loved. This one I really love as well. فَعَلِيٌّ ضَامِنٌ لِفَلْجِكُمْ آجِلًا إِن لَمْ تُمْنَحُوهُ آجِلًا. There are two different words here, ajil and ajil. One is with a hamza, one is with an ayn. They sound the same, but they're different. As a matter of fact, they're the exact opposite. Let's talk about that. He says, and so he's concluding. This is the last line of the khutbah. He says, so Ali is going to be the guarantor for your success. Okay, so what was he talking about here? I really like how Imam Ali is speaking here. What were we talking about? He was talking about fighting, right? Fighting Ashab al-Jamal or Ashab al-Siffin, probably. Ashab Siffin. Okay. So the whole context is the whole context of the khutbah right now has to do with that and going to battle. And so when he says فَعَلِيٌّ ضَامِنٌ لِفَلْجِكُمْ, Ali guarantees your success and victory. Where are our minds going to go, brothers and sisters? To victory on the battlefield, right? And I think he did that on purpose, but then he adds a word. He says ajilan. In Arabic, when you say something is ajil, that means it's going to come later. When you say something is ajil, that means it's going to come now. Yes? All right. So he says, I guarantee your victory. And people are probably thinking, okay, we're going to be victorious in this battle. But he doesn't say that. He says, I guarantee your victory in the long run. When is he talking about? He's talking about Yawm al-Qiyamah. It's beautiful though, brothers and sisters. It's beautiful. You see why? This is the perspective of Amir al-Mu'mineen, a Shia and follower of Amir al-Mu'mineen, whether young or old. If they have that tawfiq to educate themselves regarding the sayings of the Imam in places like Nahjul Balagha, they'll gain that perspective that everything that matters is akhirah, right? The victory here and stuff is cool if it happens, but in the end, that is victory. And so Ali ibn Abi Talib, he's listing the victories, but he's listing them in order of priority. So he says, listen, if you have the taqwa that I told you, and you don't compromise and get weak, and you have taqwa and you flee from Allah to Allah through obeying Him, which in this case means fighting Ashab al-Jamal, you do all of that, yeah, I promise your victory in the hereafter. In lam tumnahuhu ajilan. If you're not granted victory in in the short term. You see? Meaning what? Victory in the battlefield. So this is the promise of Ali alayhi salam to the people. The victory and success in the hereafter. If you don't have it here as well. Once again, why do I say perspective, brothers and sisters? Because sometimes we will be doing certain things, certain a'mal, uh, expecting something, and it's not bad. We all love, those spiritual experiences that some of the urafa and awliya experience, right? Who would not want to see Imam Hussein alayhi salam in his dreams or her dreams? Who would not like to, when they pray, to see angels coming and going? Who wouldn't like that? But we have to have the capacity for it. So sometimes we do something, usually we don't. Allah has left the good stuff for the hereafter, brothers and sisters. So for example, if Shaykh Amin, for example, is a zakir, is speaking about Imam Hussein, is speaking about Hazrat Abbas and so on, I can't expect to now, okay, I spoke about you, Imam Hussein, so I'll be waiting to see his dream or something. That's good if it happens, of course. But what I'm shooting for is the akhirah. Yeah? If I go for ziyarah, I will try my best to, if I'm sick, to get shifa from the haram of the Imam. But for me, what's more important is even if I don't get shifa, what's going to happen in the hereafter for me, inshallah, which is the shafa of that Imam. The rest is not the main goal. The rest is nice if it happens, but if it doesn't happen, there's a long-term success that I, inshallah, am able to achieve. That is exactly what the perspective the Imam is giving us here. Look at the wording. Look at the wording, brothers and sisters. He says, I guarantee you victory. And so the mind goes to victory on the battlefield. He says, ajilan, meaning in the Yawm al-Qiyamah, because that's what matters. In lam tumnahuhu ajilan, if you're not given it in the short term. Like, it's as if he doesn't even care about that part. This is beautiful. This is perspective. Now, there are verses in the Quran as well that have the same wording. That's why I'm always saying Ali alayhi salam, when he speaks, he's going to speak in a way that he's echoing the Quran. We have a verse in the Quran, or maybe it's two verses. Kalla bal tuhibbun al-ajilah wa tadarun al-akhirah. That Allah says in a scolding tone to the people that no. You all are in love with the ajilah, that which you can get now. Yeah? What you can secure now. The cash. I don't care about the credit. Even if the credit is 1,000 times more than the cash, I want the cash right now. I want to cash out right now. Kalla bal tuhibbun al-ajila. Like children you are. That you want the now. Wa tadharun al-akhirah. And you are leaving the akhirah, that which is going to come in the end. Akhirah means that which is going to come in the end. Of course, it also is implying the akhirah, yawm al-qiyamah. But even literally speaking, akhir or akhirah, that is that which comes in the end. So he's saying, look, the Quran is saying, look, just like children who want whatever they can get their hands on now, although it's going to hurt them in the long run, there are some of you who are doing this. You take this and you leave that. There's one point here I want to make, and then I'm going to end. Based on this verse, the wording of this verse, brothers and sisters, you can think about this as well. It's scolding the ones who take this dunya, the ajila, that which is right now, hurriedly can be attained, and they are leaving the akhirah. These are the ones who are being scolded. In other words, work for your dunya, just don't leave the akhirah. Don't compromise on your akhirah. Let that be your priority. Then secure as much dunya as you would like. That's fine, as long as you keep it within the boundaries of halal, because if you don't, you will compromise your akhirah, and that is what is scolded according to Quran, according to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and according to Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Inshallah, we can take these lines as inspiration for us in our day-to-day lives. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And since we don't have any questions, I will end here. We were gonna have the program in the center, but it was rainy, so I thank all of the brothers and sisters who tuned in tonight. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.